Welcome back to the channel. This is Nasa Stride. Today I'll be showing you how to make this stylish backless A-line gown with bell sleeve. If it's something you're interested in, keep watching, give this video a thumbs up, and let's get started. So we're starting off with drafting our pattern. So I'm just going to make a line at this top part to serve as my starting point. Okay, our measurements are going to start from this end down to the edge of our paper. So the first measurement we'll be starting with is that of the shoulder. Go ahead and take your shoulder measurement divided by 2. Just mark it down at that line there like so. Okay, and then from that point you're going to mark your armhole depth, which is gotten by dividing your round bust by 6 plus 1.5 inches. Just make a vertical line at that point and a horizontal line at that point like I'm doing. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is to just mark out my other measurement. So I just took my shoulder to waist, my shoulder to hip, and my shoulder to the full length. Now the part where I have for the chest line is going to serve as the bust point also. This is going to work perfectly because we're not inserting any darts in this dress. And then I went ahead to mark the full length of where I want this to end. Note that you can make it short, you can make it shorter, or you can make it longer depending on what you're trying to achieve. And I just went on with my rule to just make lines at those points which I marked. Alright, so I'll just go ahead to label this the chest, the waist, the hip, and then the length. Alright, so we have that down. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to mark my neck width. So I'm working with a neck width of 3.5 inches. And on this armhole depth line, I'm going to take 1 inch for my shoulder slant. And I'll go ahead and just connect it with my rule in a slant form. Okay, so we have our shoulder slant. Now I'm going to get the measurement I have here, fold my tape into 2 so I can get the midpoint, make a mark there. And then on that point, I'll go in by 1/2 inch and mark it also. On the chest line, I will take 1/4 of my round bust measurement and I'll go ahead and use my curve rule to connect those points to get my armhole curve. Okay, so we have that down. Now the next thing we want to work on is to just add the measurement. So I'm adding 1.5 inches to this. On the waist, I'll take the round waist divided by 4 and I'll add 1.5 inches. I'll do the same thing at the hip area. Take that and then add 1.5 inches. Now for the full length of this, before that, we're just going to connect these other points that we have together, the chest to the waist and then from the waist to the hip points. Okay, now note that this is an A-line gown. You can just make it as wide as you want. So I'm going to take the measurement I have around the hip area and then I'm going to add few inches to that to give me that A-line effect. Now if you want yours to be more, you can add more. So for mine, I took the measurement I had around the hip area and then I added about 6 inches to that and marked it down. Now, if you want your A-line to be out there like we had in the intro video, you can go ahead and add more for yours. Alright, so this is the shape we'll be working with. Now at the edge, if you want to curve yours, you can just go up by 1 inch and then use your curve rule to curve out that end. It's going to give you like a rounded edge at that point if you want to. Okay, so I'm just showing that, but I will not be covering this. Okay, now for the neckline, we're going to be using this pattern to cut out both the front and the back. Okay, now for the front neck depth, we'll be working with 4 inches, and then for the back, we'll be using a neck depth of 1 inch. So I just marked both neck depths for the front and the back, and I'm going to use my curve rule to just connect those points together, taking it to meet the neck width which I've marked before. Alright, so we have this is what the pattern looks like. I'll go ahead to cut this out, okay? So like I said, we're going to be using this pattern to cut out on both the front and the back. So the first thing we're going to do is to cut out our front pattern firstly before we work on this to get the back. Okay, so this is what the pattern looks like. I'll go ahead and place this on my fabric and cut out the front so that we can go ahead and work on the back. So this is the front after I finish cutting this out. We're going to, you can see the edges, I didn't curve that. What I'm going to do next is to just cut out a facing for the front. So I'll keep this aside and bring back the pattern. Now for the back of our pattern, I'll just take off the neckline for the back. Okay, so you can see what I have there. Now for the back of our pattern, from the neck depth I have on my paper, I'm going to come down by 1.5 inches. Now this is, the back has like a hold around the neck area of the back. It has like a hold. You can also alternate this and then add more. Like if you want you want to have more buttons or hooks at the back, you can do that. Now from the armhole area, I'll come down by 2 inches. Now note that for the video on the intro, they came down by 2 inches. The back is actually wider. Okay, the opening of the back is wider. But in this case, I'm going to take it lower, like down to meet the waist point. That's because there's going to be an opening on this dress by the time you finish. If you notice, the intro video had like a very wild opening. So I'm just going to just mark out the two to show you what I'm trying to say. So if you want what you have at the intro, you can just come down by 2 inches from the armhole. You can see the curve we have there. All right. Then you can also alternate to 3 inches, 4 inches, whatever you feel will work for you or whatever works for you. But for this case, I just came down to the waist. Okay, you can see it met the side of the waist. That's from the 1.5 inches point around the neck area. So this other end will be open. This is what we have. So I'm just going ahead to just cut this out so that we can place this on our fabric to cut out. Okay, so this is what we're going to have. All right, so remember the back piece, we're going to have two of this at the back. Okay, so I'm going to place this on my fabric and I'll go on and cut it out. So now while placing on your fabric, for the skirt part of your fabric, ensure to add 1 inch to the center back so that you can use that for your zip allowance. So I added 1 inch to that. And then for the center of the top piece, I added half of an inch that I'll be using to turn this over with another piece of fabric. So for the top part, you'll be needing 4 pieces of that, 2 for each end. So you can use that to turn it out. And then for the skirt part, you just need your 2 piece. Okay, will be having a facing for that later. So for the front, I've gone ahead to make a notch to indicate the waist point of this. Okay, because I wanted this to match when I start stitching it down. You can see there. And I've gone ahead to also cut out my facing. So I'm going to take this over to my machine and then just turn this over with the facing which I've cut out for the front piece. All right. Now for the skirt parts of this, I have this. Okay, this is the two of the skirts that I have. You're going to have one for the right and one for the left. I just ensure to make a notch for at the zip allowance point, and then I cut out a facing for the skirt. It measures 8 inches in length. I went on later to reduce the length to 5 inches, so you should have 5 inches of length. So what we're going to do with this is that we're going to place the facing to that which matches it. You're going to place it together and stitch it at the top. Now from where you have your zip allowance, that's the notch area, you're not going to stitch that part. Okay, we're going to leave that part open. We're going to work on that later on. So you do the same thing to the other side. Align it to the right part of your facing and go ahead and just stitch to the end where your zip stops. Now for the top part of the back, like I said, you're going to have 4 pieces of this. I've gone ahead to cut out to have 4 of this. Okay, now for this, you either have like a hook at the back to hold that in place, okay, or you have like a loop and a button. Okay, I decided to use a loop and a button. So I used my fabric and I just folded it into a little piece. I'm going to just after folding that down on the machine, I'm going to place this inside one part of this and stitch it down to create that loop, or you can use your bias to do that if you have a matching bias, and then go ahead and stitch around this. You're going to stitch the neckline and then you're going to stitch this other end, the curved end of this. Next, for the sleeve, I've gone ahead to fold up this piece of fabric. I'm just going to place it. So what I have on fold is 15 inches in width. All right. And I'm just pinning that to keep it in place so my fabric doesn't move. I'll just make a line at the starting to serve as my starting line. Okay. Then from there, I'm going to take the length. So note that this sleeve is full, like it covers the entire entire hand. So if you want yours to be bigger, you have to just add up to your usual long sleeve length. Okay, so after marking the full length, I just made a line there to indicate that point. Now from the first line, the top line which I marked, I will mark my sleeve cap of 4.5 inches. I just made a point there and I'm going with my ruler to also indicate that line. Okay, then after that, I'm going to mark half of my round bicep measurement. I'll mark that down and I'll connect it to the top of the line I had. So what I'll do next is to take the measurement I have there and get the midpoint of that line. Alright. So now to determine the curve for my sleeve, that's the reason for getting the midpoint of that. So to determine this, I'm going to take half of an inch upwards to that the top of my line, like so, like I'm doing now. Okay, and then I'll go downwards by that also to meet the line at the bottom. Okay, so you can see, I hope you can see what I'm trying to say. Okay, and then I'm adding my stitching allowance of 1 inch to the side. Now to connect this, I'll connect this to the edge. Remember I said I'm using 15 inches for the width of my sleeve, so I just ensured that I still had that, and I'm going to use my rule to just connect the top part of my sleeve to the length part of it. Okay, so this is what we have for the sleeve. Now, it's a bell sleeve, so it has a curve at the edge. In this case, I went up by 2 inches, but I would advise you go up by 1 inch, okay? Because when I went up by this 2 inches and curved it to meet my sleeve and cut it out, which was a very big mistake, I noticed that it gave me like this awkward feel at the end. I actually had to record the edge of my sleeve and it became shorter than what I wanted. So I advise you just go up by 1 inch at the edge to get the curve. You can notice how I was trying to curve this out. I still went on later to curve that out before stitching. Okay, so ensure you use just 1 inch at that end. Now for the top of the back, I'm gonna have to turn this off with the facing I cut out for it, like I said, and I also folded in the piece for my loop at the top, so you can see how nice this looks. So go ahead to give this a really good press by the time you finish stitching. Okay, so you need to work with your irons to have a good outcome. All right, then for the front, I've also gone ahead to just turn this out with my facing, and I just used my hemming gum to hold my facing inside to keep it in place so that it gives it a neat look inside. So what we're going to do is to join the facing, sorry, to join the back and the front together. So you're going to align them together, okay? Now for this, since you have both sides looking nice. Okay, since the both sides are of the same material and they're all looking good, you're just going to pick the part where you want your loop to sit and the other end. So what I'll do is to just use one piece of the back top of the back. Remember, I have two of that after interfacing it. So what I'll do is to just wrap that around the front. Okay, just normal way we stitch our shoulders together so that we don't have any stitching lines showing. And I'm going to just pin them down together like I'm doing. I'll do the same thing to the other side also. I'm going to sandwich my front piece in between the two pieces of the back and then pin it down also. And after that, I'll go ahead and stitch it down by half of an inch to keep it in place. Okay, this ensures that we have like a neat finishing around the shoulder area. So we'll just go ahead and stitch that down, and then we're going to repeat the same thing for this other part, like I said. So now for the skirt part, I'm gonna head to turn it like I said I will, and I also left that space at the zip area, okay, where my zip is going to sit. You can see the space there. That is one piece of the skirt, and this is the second piece of the skirt. You can see how nice this thing is looking. So we're going to fix our zip to this. Now to fix this, the reason why we left that open space is so that we're not going to have any stitch. We're going to like stitch our zip inside and not have like any stitching line on top, that's at the top of our skirt. So just go ahead and place your zip, sorry. I'm going to take the measurement of the length of zip I want. I'm using 8 inches for mine. That's where like the hip point, for my hip point, I'm just going to mark it on both sides, which is 8 inches. That is where I want my zip to end, right? So I'm going to take this over to the machine, okay? Stitch it down. While you're stitching, stitch your zip to that point to end at that point on both sides of the piece. So ensure you're aligning them properly. Ensure that they match at the top as they match at the bottom area. So you're going to stitch it down on the main piece of the skirt. Okay, so we're going to leave the lining piece for now, and we're going to work on that later on. So I'll just go ahead and stitch it down and then close down the other end of my skirt to the end. So I finished doing that. This is what it looks like after I finished. So I've stitched it down. I've also closed down the other end. So since we're working with the short skirts, we don't need any slit for this. Okay. So what I'll do now is to just adjust my zipper head to the base like I've just done. I'm going to be taking off the excess I have on my zip at the top, right? So take it off for both. So I decided to reduce it more. Okay, after doing the first cutting, I went in and also reduced it again. Okay, because I wanted it to be smaller inside. Okay, so now what we want to do is we're going to sandwich the remaining part of the zip. You're going to be placing that in between your facing and then the main skirt piece. You need to align them like so, and then stitch it down at the top where we left open. Remember that 1 inch area we left open at the top area of the skirt, and then also follow through with where you stitched your zip to the first piece and then stitch it down. Okay, it's going to give it a neat finishing by the time you finish doing that. So this is what it looks like after I finish doing that. This is the inside of the skirt. This is what it looks like, and this is the outside. You can see we have no stitch lines at the top of our zip, so that's what we're trying to achieve for the skirt. Now we're going to bring in our piece. This is the back and the front after I've joined the shoulders together. This is what it looks like. So what I want to do next is to fix my sleeves. Remember, I've gone ahead to cut out the sleeve. So you're going to fold the edges of your sleeves, which I've already gone ahead to do that. So this is what this looks like after I join the shoulders together. All right. So what we're going to do next is to place our sleeves on this. Okay, so we're going to bring in the sleeves to this and then align it. So you ensure you make a notch at the midpoint of your sleeve firstly, and then you align it to the part where you joined the shoulders together. So you're going to bring it in and then align the midpoint together. So ensure to fold the edges of your sleeve. It's important to have that hemmed out, and then just align the notch part of your sleeve to the mid part of your shoulder. Go ahead and join it, and also go ahead to just close it down at the sides. Okay, remember we added an allowance of 1.5 inch, so just use that allowance to close down the sides together. So this is what I have after I finished doing that. I just stitched my zip and then closed down the sides of the back piece of the front piece to the top of the back piece. Okay, so we've now worked on the skirt part of the back. So what we're going to do now is to bring in the skirt part of our back piece. All right, we're going to place it on top of it like so. So ensure that they are matching at the base. Remember, they have the same length. Ensure that matching at the base. Any part missing at the top, we're going to work on that later on. Okay, I'll tell you what to do with that. So ensure that they're matching at the base and just pin it down together at the side, which is what I'm doing right now. I'm just pinning them down so that it's easier for me when I go on to stitch this later. So ensure you exhaust the allowance you added, especially at the waist area. Now this will ensure that the waist of the skirt part of the back is going to sit perfectly on your back. If you don't exhaust that, you're going to have like openings at the back. So ensure to exhaust that allowance you add and just stitch it down. So this is what it looks like after I finish stitching it down. You can see how nice this piece looks. Okay, this dress is very lovely. So on the open ends we have of for this gown, the open ends which comes in between the waist part and then the top part of the back. What you're going to do is that you're going to, first of all, you're going to weave that edge, that overlock the edges, those rough edges firstly. After overlocking them, you're going to use your hemming gun to just place them, to keep them in place so that it just stays put at that point and it's not moving, to give it a neat look. Okay, so you're going to do the same thing for both sides. Ensure to overlock it first before you make use of your hemming gun to keep it in place. All right, so after doing that, what you have left is to fix your buttons. Like I said, I'm using a button for this, so I'm using a loop and a button for this. If you're using a hook and eye, you can go ahead to do that. So I'll just go ahead and place my button where it's going to sit, and then I will stitch it down. So don't forget to hem the edge of your dress. Okay, so go ahead and hem the edge of your dress. I'll go ahead and do that and I'll show you the final look. So this is what it looks like after I finish doing it. This is what it turned out to look like. So if you enjoyed watching this video and you're here to subscribe to the channel, please subscribe, give this video a thumbs up. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.